Welcome to RadioNyra's Leaders and Legends podcast. And today we are honored to have with us Himanshu Shah. Himanshu is the CEO and Chairman of Shah Capital Management. He is also the Executive Chairman of Marius Pharmaceuticals, which has brought to the pharmaceutical market the second oral testosterone drug. And he's also the Executive Chairman of the Emeren Group, a global solar project developer. His investment strategies and leadership go across all industries, and we're so honored to have him here. Himanshu, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve.
Well, Himanshu, we're just so excited to hear. You know, your investment fund has managed over $1 billion. You've delivered over a 20% returns over the last 10 years, and you're no longer taking any funds. So you're just the perfect person today. So we're going to talk about investing. I think this is really where we want to go, and then lead in a little bit on preventive healthcare. But I got to start with AI. I mean, this is the elephant in the room. Just a few days ago, we were with Congressman Ro Khanna, who said that over $79 billion of venture capital investment is coming into AI in the Silicon Valley, where he represents $14 trillion of valuation, including NVIDIA. These are all in his congressional district. How much of AI is hype? How much of you think it's here to stay? What are some things that we should be considering as investors on AI?
So first of all, AI is revolutionizing the growth in productivity across all vectors. You know, you can look at customer service, you can look at software development, you can look at robotics, you can look at healthcare, you can look at services, you can look at legal, finance, and list goes on and on. And I think what AI can bring is this, and I call it augmented intelligence, not artificial intelligence, because it really augments our way of doing things better. And a lot of money has, as you said, a lot of money has poured into AI. You know, you talk about 80 billion. There's almost $2 trillion in the last 3 years since ChatGPT came out that has been invested, whether it's in data centers or all applications, you know, setting up LLMs and so forth and so on. So this has been a huge boost to U.S. economies because U.S. is one of the largest, place where AI development has taken place. So as an investor, I am cautious because I think if you look at the valuations, a lot of this AI hardware, software companies, they're in stratosphere, which is understandable. It's like an infatuation that you see as an investor because you just see nothing but people talking about AI. So we have seen that with fiber optic, with internet, and so forth and so on in the past. So at Shah Capital, we are focusing more on the companies that can benefit through better productivity, using AI. And I think we are only maybe in the second or third inning of this productivity growth, led by AI. So the focus as an investor, because the risk reward is more in favor of you when you're focusing on the companies that really are trading at reasonable valuations that will benefit immensely with this productivity enhancement, instead of looking at the hardware and software companies of AI that basically, first of all, the valuations are extremely rich. And other thing is that this company still haven't found a way to show profit.
That's a great, and that really made me think about what John Chambers said a few months ago, former CEO and chairman of Cisco, when we asked him the question about AI. He said, you need to have an AI strategy. And when we asked him, what do you mean by that? He said, well, when the cloud came along, everyone thought jobs were going to go away. We put people back to work where they were valued. We created major companies like Amazon and Google. And then when he invested, he said you had to have an internet strategy when he bought companies, and they even bought WebEx. So as an investor yourself, you're a counterpart of John's. Do you believe that's important too, an AI strategy, one of productivity, product differentiation, but not making it just so hyped? Right?
So absolutely. I think the company should be focusing more on how I can increase the productivity of my employees, my teams, my way of doing things. If I'm a pharmaceutical company, how can I increase the productivity of my medical team or scientific team through using LLM? The problem sometimes what I've seen, because I run a pharma company, is that you don't want to give your data to public LLM. The other companies, a lot of consulting companies that try to set up their own LLM, whether it's McKinsey or Boston Consulting Group, and list goes on and on. they have not been successful because, again, it requires a tremendous investment to get the right LLM that gets really beneficial to employees. Even at large tier one Wall Street firms, they have their internal LLM. Most of the employees don't use those LLMs because it's inferior to the public LLMs out there. So that's a catch a lot of companies are facing. But again, it's evolving. That's why I said earlier, we are in like a second or third inning of this thing, and people will nail this thing, whether it's 3 months from now, 6 months now, or 12 months from now. But that is here to say there's augmented intelligence, and I think people should, train their employees more so that they can use these public LLMs better to increase their productivity. But
Great.
that I think is a huge accelerator, for both the top and bottom line for corporate America.
It also impact the economy with job loss, entry-level job. We could do a whole separate podcast today.
No, I mean, I think just a quick comment. I mean, that again, you're seeing the higher unemployment among youth across the world, not just in the United States, because a lot of the entry-level positions are going away. You can just have the LLM put together the model. So it's a catch-22. You are seeing a job growth in a lot of these companies that are building, AI hardware and software and services, for corporate world. But then you're also seeing a job loss at the entry level because you may not need as many customer service agents.
There you go.
Because AI agents can take care of some of those things. So we're going through this flux over here. We went through that flux with internet or cloud and whatnot that you alluded earlier. And I think we'll find a way to come out of it just fine.
My final question on AI, I'm going to make you wear your energy hat. I've researched that 100,000 ChatGPT searches daily taking place today consume about enough electricity to power up 30,000 homes. Big problem, challenge with data centers. So we have data centers cropping up even in Wake County. Where does this idea of global energy, solar development? I mean, how do we have to be thinking about energy as well as we grow AI?
Great question. So let me give an example. We have had very little power usage growth in the United States over the last 20 years, except in the last 2 years or so, where you're seeing the demand for power going up by almost 4 or 5% now. Is because of these data centers, which are power hungry. And so renewable is going to play a big role in that, even though the current administration policies is very much against the growth of renewables, because it takes time to set up a natural gas power plant. As much as we want to set up a natural, because we have plenty of natural gas in the United States. It takes time. Nuclear the same way. Even the mini nuclear reactors, it takes 3-4 years. It used to take 10 years. Mm-hmm. So that energy source is gonna be there for data centers because you need 24/7 power. So where I see is like, the storage is just not the solar project, but then you have batteries that are backing the power. And I think that's where, my company is focusing a bit on that in the United States, but that I see globally. So renewable has a very vital role to play in this data center or the power hungry stations, I call them.
Well, we need to convey that message to Duke Energy and the leaders around our state. Let's get into tariffs. This is an issue that's coming up frequently. President Trump has increased tariffs 50% on products from India. It's affected the U.S.-India relationship. Where do you stand on tariffs as an economic strategy? How does it impact investors, supply chains, consumers? What is your take on this?
First of all, I would describe one word: disarray. That's what we all are going through today. It's just not in India, but on other countries. So average tariff the U.S. has imposed is around 18%.
Yeah.
And that's basically a tax on consumer. So I call it, we generally pay in most of the states, with the exception of few, between 4 to 8% sales tax. You should add another 6 to 10% tax on top of that, because all the tariffs are not actually going to filter through the consumers. And it's again on the sourcing, not the final price that the retailers charge us. So I look at what I call it a souped up 12% VAT tax on US consumer from 4 to 8% sales tax. Naturally, it's not good for consumption. It's not good for job growth. And you can see since February, we really haven't had any job growth, especially if you take out the healthcare, which is mainly elderly care, where a lot of jobs and new jobs are being created. The world is also in disarray because, like you mentioned, India has to find now other countries that's going to buy their products, from the United States because, you're going to see 10, 20, 30% reduction in the shipments from India. Same thing out of China, same thing out of Europe. So they all are trying to find different markets. So the long-term global or macro impact, if these tariffs continue, would be the reduced influence of the United States on a global scale.
And this will affect, investor confidence, global market, just investors in general, right? Across the.
It should. It hasn't yet, but it should.
That's a good segue into our next question, and thank you for clarifying that on tariffs. What should our investment strategy be now? I mean, we've got people that listen to the show. They're real estate investors. They want to invest in the market. You've had a great record, 20% return over a 10-year period. You're a perfect guy to ask this question. If I'm out there putting my money in the market, what's your advice?
Well, first of all, I think there are two markets over here. So I think this market is what I call it resembles three prior markets. 1970s Nifty 50 trade, because there was a lot of confusion post Nixon, because he also put tariffs, took the US dollar out of the gold standard, and it created tremendous amount of confusion. And then we saw a lot of inflation in the 70s. We are seeing more inflation today than we used to see. There's also the 2000, the tech bust. There was a lot of infatuation on internet and fiber optics. Did not end so well. We're still using internet a lot more than we did 25 years or so ago. So it has nothing to do with internet. It's about the underlying valuation of the companies. And it also, 2007, 2008, where there was a lot of leverage. That was mainly concentrated in housing. Today you have buy now, pay later, which is like it just exploded. So a lot of people are just buying a lot of things and taking on a lot more debt. So you have a three kind of a different, what I call it, a replica of these three cycles over here. So as an investor, we are cautious because this Nifty 50 trade, if you look at the top 50 US companies, trading on S&P 500 index, they're worth over $45 trillion. $45 trillion. That equals the market capitalization of China, India, Western Europe, Japan, South Korea, Brazil, Mexico, and list goes on. Pretty much all overseas markets combined. 45. And that's just the 50 companies. And that's where I think people have, because of, a lot of people are just investing in index funds and index, passive investing it's called. And they have to buy all these top 50 companies. And there's a lot of algorithmic trading going on, which basically algo models that just basically want you to buy what's working or what's going up.
Right.
So there is a confluence of all these things. So this market has become more like a flow-driven market, not fundamentals-driven market. And so that creates a tremendous amount of caution as a new investor or an existing investor. But if you look at the rest of the market, that is actually very reasonably valued. So that's where we are focusing on. And that's where I think your risk-reward ratio is a lot more in your favor. And that's where as an investor I would focus on.
Two more questions on investing and we're going to get into preventive care. Just a quick perspective on real estate. So we're seeing, at least in Morrisville, carry 25, 30% office vacancy. People aren't coming back to work after COVID. How does this affect the real estate markets in general? I mean, in terms of just, costs are up. Do you still think people are going to be putting money down on deals to buy land, to invest? Or are we just going to have to shift our focus here?
A very good question. So first of all, I think this area is a by itself because you still have net population growing in this area. They need houses. They need to go shop. and so forth and so on. So I think those factors within real estate are going to do just fine. May not appreciate as much as it has on a percentage basis in the last 5 years or so, but it will still continue to appreciate. In terms of office buildings and whatnot, I think actually, a lot of companies are bringing their employees back, with 3 days, 4 days or something. So office market is not completely, it has been in recession for 5 years. It may come back a little bit, especially in this area. I'm not too gung ho on this warehousing and so forth and so on because of these tariffs, and that's going to reduce the unit consumption because of you have a 12% tax over here total. So people are going to buy less. If you're buying 3 pairs of shoes a year, you may buy two and a half or something, and that's not good for warehousing. So that's how I look at real estate, kind of just look at office space. But this market is really by itself. If I look at nationally, I'm very cautious because again, you have to have job growth, which we don't have today, nationally speaking. So I'm cautious on real estate as an investment throughout the country. In the triangle, I feel good.
And stock markets are at an all-time high. Is this is that a good thing? Do you see it crashing? We've been here before, right? Is this a trend we've seen before?
I see more of a correction in this Nifty 50 trade if I have to look at over the next 6-12 months or so. And I think the indices are heavily weighted towards those top 50 companies. So you could have 10, 20, 30% pullback. Wouldn't surprise me a bit. Actually, market is ready for a breather. Frankly, there's too much money chasing stocks today. So, as I say, it's a two-tier market, I said earlier. Those very, that top-heavy companies of, mega caps, if you want to call that, or Magnificent Seven, or how you want to. I think they are very richly valued. I would not buy those companies today. The rest of the market is not too bad.
Well, that's good. That's promising. We're going to shift gears now to healthcare.
Sure.
A lot to pack in here. Let's start with Marius Pharmaceuticals and testosterone therapy. Many of us don't realize that testosterone is a hormone. Tell us a little bit about hormone strategies and what you're seeing in the market as you chair Marius Pharmaceuticals with testosterone, the preventive benefits, things that we should be thinking about when we talk about testosterone therapy and hormones.
I think, first of all, hormones are very important for living longer and healthier. Adequate hormones, I call that. And I think it's as we get older, whether we're in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, the hormones kind of, the natural production goes down. But again, we don't get tested on that, because it's just not on the criteria on when you go for your annual blood checkup. Anyone who is diabetic or anyone who is obese should get the testosterone level checked because there is a good chance that 1 in 2 will have low testosterone. Low testosterone is a chronic disease that people are not really looking at as they should for better health, for a better quality of life. But a lot of hormones, D is a hormone, that a lot of people are deficient, just like testosterone. GLP that a lot of people are taking nowadays to reduce their weight, it's a hormone. Insulin is a hormone. So they're like 100 hormones. But these are these 4 or 5 top hormones in a human body. But there is not enough focus that has been given to this vital role hormones play. And that's the unfortunate part. And I think at Marius we are working very hard to change that perception. But again, it starts with a blood test. One should get their testosterone level checked, and if it's low, it should be treated.
Well, that's a great segue. It's really amazing that you're advancing so much this innovation in testosterone therapy. Diabetes, hypertension, obesity, cardiovascular disease. These are common, diseases among many in our community, millions across this country.
Mm-hmm.
Across the state of North Carolina. We have Dame Sangvai now, Secretary of DHHS, Indian American, first one in the cabinet for the governor, Stein. Tell me a little bit about, in addition to therapies, how can we live our daily lives to be more healthy? I know you take walks, you stay very fit, you're very active, but any advice as our friend, brother, and CEO of
Sure.
how we stay healthy?
Well, first of all, you hit the nail on the head on chronic disease because it's, 50 years ago, only like 5% of Americans had chronic disease. Today it's almost 80%. So chronic disease that you laid out, diabetes, high blood pressure, and obesity and so forth and so on, that are truly, 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 out of whack. So I think besides taking the medication that one should, uh, I think living a balanced life, eating the least amount of processed food. So, more vegetables, more fruits, more lentils, more seafood. I think that should be part and parcel of a daily diet. Regular exercise every day, 45 minutes to an hour, whether it's walk, brisk walk, run. Strength training is very important, by the way, especially for when you get in your 40s and 50s, because our muscle mass goes down. That's another thing of low testosterone, is like your muscle mass gets weaker, which is not good. So if you don't have adequate hormones, adequate testosterone in your body, your muscle mass is actually on a lower side, which is not good, because you can fall down and break your bones. And you can be hospitalized, and it costs like $50,000 to the healthcare system. So going back, I think living, get more sunlight. I think people that do that tend to have a lot better life, tend to have a healthy life, and they tend to live longer.
Okay, really, really interesting there. And my final couple questions is, one is anti-aging, and it really made my day. Some experts say that we could go that 100 will be the new 70. So that means you and I are spring chickens. There's a lot of time left. But do you think that's realistic? Anti-aging science and therapies. Do you think this is something that pharmaceutical industry will be looking at, or do you think it's hype, or do you believe that by doing these things and the technologies we have out there that we will end up living longer anyway, which actually could drive up healthcare costs?
Right. Well, yes and no on healthcare cost. I hardly go see a physician, so actually my insurance is just paid for nothing. Um, there is a lot of money right now getting invested into anti-aging and living longer. You are absolutely right. You could be 75 years old and you have an energy of a 40-year-old. It's how you live your life. Look at you. You're in your late 50s. You have a lot of energy because you take good care of yourself. So it's the same thing. But there is a lot of money going into hormone research. There's a lot of money going into, how do we reverse the cell aging? That's also very hot. The organ transplant. I think that's, it's interesting. Last week in Beijing, Putin, Xi, and Kim were talking on hot mic that human beings can live up to 150.
Oh, yeah, I heard about
Yeah, but they were mainly talking about transplant of organs. But I think
Yeah.
there are that reversing the cell aging, and hormones play a big role in that. I think go a long way, and I truly believe that people are going to live longer. Because of all this advancement in medical science that is already taking place, and I see more force, behind that.
Well, this has been a wonderful time with you. My last question is going to be kind of a leadership question. You've had so much success as an investor, as a CEO, a community leader, being sponsoring HumSob and so many community organizations. We thank you for that. What has made you? How do you define a strong leader? What advice do you have? What are some of the experiences that you've learned along the way to get you in a position where you can lead? Because authority is one thing. You're a CEO, you tell someone to do something, they're going to do it. But leadership is different because you have to get others around you to be motivated to work. And you've obviously done both very well. Any advice for us out there in terms of running companies or aspiring for political office, leadership?
I think first of all, you have to set your own example, right? If you are going to be working 12 hours and 14 hours, which a lot of successful leaders do, I think that itself motivates a lot of people that, hey, the boss is here in the office, why should I leave at 5 o'clock? But beyond that, I think it just, really understanding, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and giving them guidance on that. That also go a long way. Frankly, on the leadership front, I'm still learning because I always have been an investor. It just in the last, I would say, 5 years or so, I've taken more of a leadership role at the operating companies. So it's an evolving exercise, I call that, and I'm still learning on that front. But again, the key is really understanding, the people that are working under you, with you, for you. And if you do that well, I think you're going to be a better leader.
And creating a culture of continuous innovation, which I've seen in your companies. People are just so excited to get up every day and work. And I think that's important. They have to be bought in. They have to feel like they're part of the team and the success, which I think you've done a great job of.
Thank you.
Well, folks, Himanshu, thank you for being with us today. It's been a wonderful podcast on the Leaders and Legends Show on RadioNyra. We've been honored to have such a great leader in our state, Himanshu Shah, who is an investor across all these different industries. So thank you for being with us. Thank you for listening to RadioNyra, and we'll be back for another great episode with another great leader.